What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Jacob Punturi. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we remain in the nothing, in the abyss, I call it, from June to the end of July when they show up at Latrobe for training camp. But in the meantime, there's still plenty to talk about. We're diving into Will Howard and Omar Khan's rather revealing words on the 6th round rookie quarterback and how the Pittsburgh Steelers may be showing their hand in a market one way or another. And while we came into the show thinking the Steelers may be showing it in a direction we may not favor, one comment that has popped up in a matter of the last seconds may show us otherwise. We're diving into that plus more. It's a beautiful one here in the Berg. It's been 4 billion degrees. I'm not complaining. I have a simple rule in life. I will complain about rain and snow forever. I will never complain about heat, no matter how hot it is, because, well, it's not rain or snow. And it puts a smile on my face most mornings. How you feel, my friend? For those of you who don't know, Jacob's not in his basement where we're chilling right here. He's in good old West Virginia. Hope it's nice and warm up there as well.
I tell you what, man, it is sizzling hot in wild and wonderful West Virginia this weekend. I am the complete opposite of you in the sense that I will complain every moment that it's hot, and I will not complain if it's snowing and cold because I am just constantly sweating. I'm the sweatiest man you'll ever see or meet. So wild and wonderful West Virginia has been playing perfectly into that this weekend and on this Monday morning. But it's good. It's wild and wonderful. And my deodorant's working extra hard today because it's a Steelers Monday, baby. So I'm good. Happy to be chatting with you, Noah. Happy to be chatting with all of Steelers Nation this morning.
Yes, sir. And Broderick Wallace here in the comments, bright and early here, has a quick one for you before we start diving into some Pittsburgh Steelers news. For a man who just made it known that he will complain about the heat and that it is very warm over in good old wild and wonderful West Virginia, you are wearing a hoodie.
I am.
Yeah.
Because if I took it off, you'd see my the sweat stains on my armpits. So that is for anyone's viewing pleasure on this lovely Monday morning and to save me the embarrassment. But thank you so much for pointing it out.
All right, shout out. All right, let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football. It's, again, the abyss. It's June. There's nothing going on. We are a couple of weeks, really about a week and a half away from everybody, the Pittsburgh Steelers included, packing up, going on vacation in the NFL, shutting the doors, locking them, and coming back at the end of July when training camp starts. But we still are in a time where teams are making phone calls, moves are being made. Jair Alexander the other day decided he's going to Baltimore because the Pittsburgh Steelers weren't a team that were interested in the former Pro Bowl cornerback. According to Jeremy Fowler, the Pittsburgh Steelers were not one of the teams who made a phone call to see if Jair Alexander was available. Those teams instead were the Atlanta Falcons, the Miami Dolphins, which is rather surprising, to be honest with you, but we're not a Dolphins podcast. And the Pittsburgh Steelers remained on the sideline. At first glance, you think, okay, well, there are two big names that the Pittsburgh Steelers could consider at the cornerback market. We've discussed both of them at length between Jair Alexander and Jalen Ramsey, both different directions. Jair Alexander would be a free agent. You go out and you sign him. $4 million is what he got from the Baltimore Ravens, but he's also dealing with injuries. He's played 7 games each of the last 2 seasons. Yeah, last season he came up with 2 interceptions, but you're still looking at it going, concerns, reliability is not there. The best ability in the NFL is availability, and the Pittsburgh Steelers wouldn't probably get that from Jair Alexander. So the other one that you're looking at is Jalen Ramsey. And you say immediately, when the Steelers aren't interested in Jair Alexander, well, it means that they can't be interested in Jalen Ramsey as well. At least that's what first glance kind of gives you. I think, to be honest, the Pittsburgh Steelers have maybe too high hopes for a guy in Beanie Bishop. They have way too high hopes in a guy like Dante Kent. And maybe they're hopeful that a guy like Sebastian Castro or even a guy like Juan Thornhill can replace some of that slot play and make it work. Maybe Corey Trice could bounce inside. Maybe Brandon Eccles is a name to start watching, who was, I think, a little bit impressive during OTAs and minicamp. But at the end of the day, there's a clear upgrade. That upgrade is Jalen Ramsey. You're looking at it going, maybe they're out on this one if they are out on Jair Alexander. Before I dive into the opposite of this, because there is a comment that reveals otherwise, do you connect the two? If the Steelers were not or did not have a hand in Jair Alexander, Jalen Ramsey may come with some headlines, but Jair Alexander has been suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. He has not been a guy that many have looked at as a positive influence in a locker room as of recently. It's a name that in an offseason, in back-to-back off seasons where the Pittsburgh Steelers have made it very known they are getting rid of the noise. Jair Alexander brings the noise. Do you connect those two in they're out on Jair, they're out on Jalen, and it's time to shut that down?
I am trending more in that direction, I have to admit. And the reason being, if they wouldn't even show interest in a free agent who was very easy to get, it makes me hesitant that they would be willing to expend any sort of assets or anything in return to go and get Jalen Ramsey from the Miami Dolphins. I also, at the same time, just continue to believe that the Steelers' stubbornness, for better or worse, can prohibit them from seeking upgrades that maybe are easily available. Because if Jeremy Fowler is bang on here, and I don't know how much I buy that 100% that the Steelers had no interest. I'm not saying that Jeremy Fowler's wrong, but I think it would be crazy if the Steelers truly had zero interest in bringing in a cornerback who is a clear upgrade. Similarly, how they should have an interest in bringing in a Jalen Ramsey because he provides a tangible upgrade for their secondary. That all being said, I think I'm starting to believe that they just really have no interest in going out and getting a veteran, whatever way that is, to improve the secondary.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Was there a second part of your question? Sorry.
No. That was spot on. Now it's the other side of this, because we're sitting here, we came into this, and I don't know, like you just kind of, maybe it's gloomy, maybe it's June, maybe it's the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers have done a lot, but have also always been a team that shuts down the big names. Maybe it was Jeremy Fowler's report. And I agree with you. Like, while maybe they didn't call, doesn't mean that they necessarily didn't have interest. There are conversations that have happened all over the place. Again, it's the Trevor Lawrence conversation. Like, I have a hard time sitting here and saying that nobody ever, that doesn't mean they called. There was nobody to call, but it doesn't mean that nobody had a conversation going, maybe, like, what would the price be of a Trevor Lawrence? You know what I mean? If we were sitting here at a table having a coffee, what's the price of a Trevor Lawrence? And I could see the same thing happening with Jair Alexander. Then Cody Silva drops this one in the comments this morning and shoots us an email. I'm not going to lie to you, Cody. I was bad. You could ask Jacob. I was battling a migraine this weekend, and it was not happening. There was emails were not getting read. Phone calls were not getting read. Text messages. Alan Saunders hit me up on Saturday and was like, yo, you trying to come on the podcast? I answered him Monday morning. I felt terrible about it. Cody Silva drops this on us. I sent you an email on Friday saying that that Jalen Ramsey started following the Pittsburgh Steelers, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, and TJ Watt. Weird or a coincidence? And I got to be honest, I don't know if Jalen did follow the Pittsburgh Steelers and all of these teams, but it is weird if he didn't. And it's also weird if he was just randomly following the Pittsburgh Steelers for some reason. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, that one doesn't surprise me at all. Like, they've all been Pro Bowlers together. I would imagine they know each other. I got a hard time believing that one's just that one just happens. Like, that's players following players. The Pittsburgh, like, there's no reason for a Jalen Ramsey there's no chance Jalen Ramsey grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and wants to remain on the West Coast and is like, you know what, I'm just following these guys because, big fan of the team. Does it change your thought at all of any of this when you see that?
Of course, and it adds a totally different variable into this whole crazy equation that is the Steelers secondary. I think it certainly makes it a slightly higher possibility than if this happened. I also will say that I think social media is such a jungle gym for like
Yes.
players and agents to sort of like maneuver, get their point across, sway opinions, like do all these things. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's been very public knowledge that Jalen Ramsey, or at least it's been publicly reported that Jalen Ramsey has a desire to go to the West Coast. Um, I also think it would put some pressure on maybe the Dolphins management if he Ramsey and his camp are cozying up with the Steelers. Maybe they are preferring that as a destination. It might be a leverage play to force the Dolphins' hand to get a deal done somewhere else. Like, you know
True.
what, we're fine going to Pittsburgh, and you know, we actually want to go to the Steelers. I have a great relationship with all of these players. Could very well be, and I'm not saying this is what's happening, but just to throw out a possibility, could
Yeah.
very well be a play to try and force the Dolphins' hand into some other move that is preferred for Ramsey.
I like that theory. I do like that theory a lot. And I could see it going the other way as well, like where it's they're
Mhm,
trying to force a
mhm,
hand, but at the same time, they really are sitting there going, I mean, what's not to like? Aaron Rodgers, Mike Tomlin, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, Darius
mhm.
Slay's there now. Joey Porter
Mhm.
Jr. seems like a good dude. According to Maddie here, he followed Joey Porter Jr. and Broderick Jones as well, which I think is pretty
Interesting.
big. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like they're Broderick's a random name. When it comes down to it, Broderick is the most
You're
of
right.
the random where you could go out and follow if you are a Jalen Ramsey. I mean, I don't know. What's your surprise meter on a scale of one to, if they pulled this off? If all of a sudden tomorrow, we know it would happen like at the most inconvenient time. So it'd be, I don't know. I have a pitch meeting at 2 o'clock. Try to get us some midsummer sponsors because Factor Meal was only in June. I got a doctor's appointment. Trying to get these migraines to go away at 5 o'clock. I would imagine if it was going to happen, it's something around that timeline there.
Mhm, mhm.
What's your surprise? Not today. I'm not predicting today, but what is your surprise factor if they pull this one off with complete silence? Because there is nobody. Jerry Dulac is saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not into Jalen Ramsey. I have not been told a single thing about Jalen. I have had conversations about Will Howard. I have had conversations about the plan for Jalen and Caleb Johnson. I have had conversations about how great Derek Harmon looks, or how DK is the dude, or how, all of these things constantly. Jair Alexander, I've had conversations about. Jalen Ramsey's never come up. What's your surprise? 1 to 10, what would your surprise meter be?
Oh, it'd be very high. Let's go. I would put it somewhere around us like a 7, just because this feels like like you mentioned, out of nowhere. It feels like this has just been mostly speculation across the board, mostly just it would be nice if the Steelers picked him up. Like it would be a nice added piece for a potential Super Bowl run, whatever, yada, yada, yada. But it has never really felt like a strong possibility and has not felt like a priority for the Steelers in terms of trying to upgrade their roster further before training camp and the regular season actually begins. So I would be pretty shocked, and I know we've talked about cornerback being a potential area of need for the team, but for them to address it by going out and getting a player like a Jalen Ramsey, that is, I would put that at like a 7 or an 8 on my surprise meter, because I think that is just a very out of the uh, outside of the usual, you know, modus operandi for the Steelers and their management.
I agree. I agree. I'd be pumped. I'll say that for anybody who sits around and says Jalen Ramsey's old or the Steelers don't need a corner. I mean, Jalen Ramsey makes any team better.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, Jalen Ramsey makes. And if you are a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers that has to face a Jamar Chase who plays in the slot, who has to face a T. Higgins, who has to face a Jerry Jeudy who likes to play in the slot, I mean, Rashad Bateman's there now, any of these tight ends, you could certainly use a Jalen Ramsey if he is available. Before we move on to Will Howard, I'll finish it with a question that I think we ask many times, but I'll ask it again. What are you giving up for Jalen Ramsey?
It's got to be a mid to late round draft pick in 2026. It just can't be a lot, especially if you're going to make, what I forget, 16 million was the cap hit. Is that what
16,
we?
yeah, just over
Yeah.
16.
So especially, it's not like you are just taking on some very disposable player or something like that. But at the same time, the Steelers could not give up too much. I would be willing to go for like a fourth. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot for a player of Jalen Ramsey's resume, but it's all about the fit and the time. So I wouldn't be willing to expend a ton of assets for him. Do you think otherwise?
No, I think I sit right in that same ballpark. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you are really a team that believes you're all in, fourth round pick is the most I'm going to give up for a Jalen Ramsey, and I'm feeling okay about it. But the Dolphins have no leverage here. Like, none. The Dolphins are a team that at this point they're pretty done. Super Bowl window might be pretty close to closed. Artie Burns is their starting corner. It's just not a great time to be in Miami, and Jalen wants out. They can't afford him because they've done a boatload of other things like sign Tua, who probably shouldn't have got a contract as big as he needed. That's the problem with quarterbacks, and here we are. So I think that they don't have leverage, and if the Steelers are in a bidding war, the highest I'm going is a fourth, but I don't expect them to be in a bidding war. I just expect them to say, yeah, we'll give you a call and we'll see what happens. And if again, a fourth round pick is probably the highest I'm going, but I feel pretty comfortable with, even if it's just for a year, even if you can make it work for 2, to have an opportunity to say this year we really are all in. Why not? Like, why wouldn't you? The Steelers should always be all in. That's their mantra. That's what they do, is they are an all in football team. If they could do it here, I mean, I think they should. I definitely think they should. All right, let's talk some Will Howard here as we transition from defense to offense. Omar Khan opened up about a lot over the weekend. He spoke more than, I mean, look, I can't wait to see him the first day of training camp, because the first thing I'm going to say to him is, hey, pal, when I ask you a question, I get 4 words, or you lie. Like, well, can we get something? Can we find some happy medium here? Because he did so much talking on the standard, which I understand, that's what it is. But he did so much talking on the standard on this team's YouTube channel over the weekend. He said this about Will Howard, quote, "We did lots of homework on him. I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him through the process and getting to know him. Just can't say enough about what he meant to that Ohio State team. In fact, the fact that he was able to just really take charge of that offense and that team in a lot of ways, it just really, really impressive." Arthur Smith added this: with Will, it's really impressive what he did at Ohio State. The mental component of it was really important. The mental toughness and effort, that's what gets a lot of guys handling the pressure of the position. To be able to do that week in and week out, not get bored of the mundane. And certainly with Will, you saw that at the highest level in college football. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm not going to sit here and say, is there a chance that Will Howard is the future? I'm not going to sit here and say, is there a quote that changes your mind on the Pittsburgh Steelers' plans in 2026? Because nothing the Steelers will say or even do unless Will Howard becomes the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers and remains the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout the entire season, wins a couple of playoff games, looks damn good in the process, will change the Steelers' plans for 2026. They will be going to get a first-round high-end quarterback. But the fact that they did do so much homework, the fact that they are so impressed with a Will Howard, is there any place in your mind where the thought of Will Howard might shock the hell out of us one day floats around? One day. I'm not saying this year, because it's not going to happen this year. And there's a difference between being realistic about a question and not being realistic about a question. This year is unrealistic. But in the future, if for something happened, is there a part of you that says maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers really do believe if Will Howard could hit his potential, there's a little bit more than we believe?
No, I'm answering for the Steelers in this question. I believe that there is maybe a 5 to 10% chance that Will Howard could become a true long-term starter for the Steelers. And I say this as someone who, again, really, really believes in Will Howard, has been impressed with what I've seen of him, was even more impressed with the limited, conversation I had with him at minicamp. But all that to say, I think the Steelers do not really see that in him at all. And
Yeah.
as long and maybe for Omar Khan, it is really, that was an in-depth answer from him. We rarely do see that. I didn't get any sense of him being entirely honest during
Yeah.
that response, because the thought I have in my head as I'm hearing that, as I'm reading about that and watching the standard is, well, can't you just say that about any quarterback who's won a
Yes.
national championship? There is a very bad, there's not a one-to-one of national championship winners to successful NFL quarterbacks. In fact, you could probably, argue for the inverse. It's not a guarantee that winning in college does anything for your NFL career. So I understand that it is certainly a compliment, and he deserves high regards for leading the Buckeyes to a national championship, but they were
Yeah.
just the most complete dominant team in all of the NCAA in 2024. So with that, combined with the fact that just being impressive in college alone is not indicative of being a starting quarterback long term in the NFL.
Yes.
It doesn't really sway me in terms of my long term outlook, but I do remain hopeful that he has these tools and the makeup and the personality to improve. How far, the ceiling of that improvement, I don't think is a 10-year starter in the NFL, but I think he can maybe get to Mason Rudolph level. I think is becoming more and more realistic.
Yeah.
Does that
I
seem
mean, I
fair?
think I think the floor for Will Howard is a Mason Rudolph. Like, I think
Mhm.
he's able to process the field well enough. I think he's got, I don't think it's an elite arm, but I think he's got a decent arm. And I think if he could work as a backup and be a spot starter for 4 to 5 games a season, he'll win you 4 to 5 games a season. I feel
Mhm.
pretty good about that situation. I think I agree with you. Like, I look at, I think the Steelers have put Will Howard in a great spot, better spot than they've put anybody in since, I don't know, maybe Ben, but Ben was just a natural great talent. But they didn't put Mason Rudolph in a good spot at all. They put Kenny Pickett in the worst spot you could ever imagine in your life. And Will Howard comes in here with a good offensive coordinator, decent weapons around him, a good rookie class, and Aaron Rodgers teaching him how to play in the NFL. That's pretty good. That's pretty good spot to be in. So I'm going to say that, do I have confidence Will Howard surprises us one year? No, I don't. And I think the excitement of Will Howard fades the moment that the Steelers draft a quarterback next year. I think everybody who tries very hard to push the Will Howard narrative quickly fades and becomes the, Lenora Sellers hype club a year from now. And that's what the NFL is it's a constant rotation of who's the new guy, what's exciting, and quarterbacks are like flashy keys to dogs. That's what they are. Like, they're just the most exciting position on the field.
Mhm.
But I will also say that if this was Quinn Ewers, if this was Dylan Gabriel,
Mhm.
if this was Kyle McCord, I'd say there's almost no chance that I have any expectation they do anything besides be a backup if they become a backup in the NFL. I think Will has an opportunity to become more than that. And even if it's not in Pittsburgh one day, I think the Steelers could find themselves with a guy who is impressive, and takes those steps. And I also think that it shows that in a really bad quarterback class, the Steelers played their hand very well, because they avoided the Shadur Sanders and made it known they were avoiding the Shadur Sanders. They avoided the hype train of Jalen Hurt, or yeah, nope, not Jalen Hurts,
Milrow.
Jalen Milrow, excuse me, and Quinn Ewers, and the Kyle McCords. They didn't jump on any bandwagon. They said Will Howard's a dude who from the jump looks like at bare minimum a long-term backup, and that's pretty good to us. And they stuck the course. And I think that's very important. I think this draft class is atrocious at quarterback, but I also think that of them, Will Howard is the one that looks a lot better than a 6th round pick I'm not saying he's a first round pick, but I would have taken him in the 4th and felt pretty okay about it. 6th is different. But I wouldn't be, I'd be surprised, but if it happened, if I wouldn't say my shock levels is 0. I'd say it's or my confidence in it is 0. I'd say maybe a 4.5. 4.5 feels like a good number. Before we turn off this, go ahead.
That is, I mean, again, like I say this as someone who is like really was enamored with Will Howard during the like draft process and like the final months leading up to it. Like,
yeah,
I think the amount of belief and like confidence in him is kind of absurd for a 6th round draft pick and a rookie quarterback who is coming in not necessarily to be the number 1 quarterback in a new organization. So, I mean, I think he already has, there's not a lot of 6th round quarterbacks or really mid round draft picks that organizations can talk about and be like, we see something in him, or do we see anything more than just a camp body in this player? So the fact that Will Howard has any upside at all, I think is the impressive part. And I think once we get into like the training camp and the preseason, I think my opinion, like seeing him in minicamp, my opinion of him sort of just like shifted in like seeing, going from enamored with this prospect to seeing him with NFL players. So I'm excited to see if that changes with more competitive action, or if, the 6th round pick sort of label with exciting upside is where we are at in a month or 2.
I agree. I think once you get to training camp and you get some eyes on him, you could see where the groundwork is and where it could go, where the groundwork could go, because that's the part of this, is that Tanner Morgan last year looked terrible. Chris Oladokun looked atrocious when he showed up in Pittsburgh. Both of them are like, they're in the same class. They're in the same category as Will Howard because they're late or undrafted quarterbacks. And that's just what you lump together. If Will Howard looks better, I think he's higher than a 6th round pick, but I also don't think that he walks out there and looks like a starter. I think there's a firm difference between, I don't even think Kenny Pickett walked out there and looked like a starter. I don't think Mitch Trubisky looked like a starter. But Aaron Rodgers walked out there and you went, damn, that's Aaron Rodgers. Like, that guy looks pretty good right from the jump. I think that's where we have to get an eye on Will Howard. But I do like the Steelers' confidence in their 6th round quarterback. All right. With that said, that's everything on our agenda this Monday morning. We're going to start diving in to all your questions. Make sure you toss them in the chat. We will be right back.
Pittsburgh, this one's for you. From the voices behind all Steelers talk comes Black and Gold Apparel, your go-to for bold, fan-driven merch that reps the city, the Steelers, and everything in between. Whether you bleed black and gold or just love that Pittsburgh grit, we've got something for you. It's more than a podcast. It's a community. And thanks to your support, we're proud to bring the passion from our mics to your closets. Gear up, stand out, and show the world what real fans look like. Shop now at blackandgoldapparel.myshopify.com.
All righty. Shout out to our members. Shout out to our super chatters. Make sure you're calling in to the call-in show for Wednesday. I know it's quiet. I know there's not much going on, but yell at me or something. Tell me that my takes suck, or tell me that I'm awesome. Give me a cure for some migraines. That would be even better. We're going to start it off with Cody Silva here. He's following Broderick Jones, and that's in relation to Jalen Ramsey. Is there a name? Okay. Is there a name? And there's actually, I'll change the question here. Okay. There was a comment in here, and I think it relates to this, where maybe he's just following them because they trained together. So I'll address that a lot of guys train together, and a lot of them follow each other on Instagram, but I also know a lot of players who train with so many guys that they come in and you'll ask them, be like, oh, did you work with, I saw you and blah, 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 go to the same trainer. And they'll go, oh, we do. And they have no idea because they're dialed in. That being said, is there a more random name on this team that you could look at and go, that guy, that's an indicator that Jalen is not just following the big names in Pittsburgh, maybe outside of like Nope. It might actually be Broderick Jones. It might be an offensive lineman.
Here's when I'll be convinced. And if this has already happened, then, color me convinced. If he's following Christian Kuntz on social media, then I will go place a ginormous bet that Jalen Ramsey becomes the Steelers.
I love that so much. Christian Kuntz should be followed by everybody. He is the funniest guy in the locker room. Like,
facts.
He is just and it's wild because sometimes he'll just like randomly be like, I don't get out of Pittsburgh much. I'm like, you play in the NFL, bro. Get out of Pittsburgh, dude. Like for like 10 minutes. He's full Yinzer, man. It's awesome. It's awesome. David here. Jalen wants West Coast. DK also wanted warm weather. That's my biggest indicator with that is while I don't know if I'm sold that the Steelers are in on Jalen Ramsey, and I was sold that the Steelers had an opportunity on DK. I remember our boy Nick Belsky was sitting here telling me I'm crazy. Wasn't going to happen. And I was like, yeah, I think it's going to happen. Like, I think they need a wide receiver. DK Metcalf is a wide receiver. Boom. Corner I'm not as sold on, but the warm weather thing is nonsense. It is so easy to watch and see where reports come from nowadays. It's just there's too many reports. Like it used to be one report would come out on a Monday and it'd be on ESPN or NFL Network and it was real big and splashy and you're going, oh, that's huge. Now it's every little detail comes out and you just go, all right, some of this is factual. Some of this is really good. And I'm not saying that this isn't factual. What I'm saying is that somewhere, somehow this report came out, but I doubt Jalen was sitting there going, man, dude, if the Steelers want to pay me, I don't want to go there because I'd like to be on a West Coast team. No, I don't think that's how it works. First off, Pittsburgh's warm for like a week a year. It's nice. It's the week now. So if you show up, it's like Miami outside. And I just don't like teams at the end of the day. Miami doesn't care where Jalen wants to play. They just want to trade him somewhere. And I do not fall for the wet. Do you feel differently? Like, because I just look at it as nonsense.
That's why if you play the tape back to when we were talking about it earlier, I amended what I said to like from public knowledge to publicly reported, because it's not like, you have to take all of this with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to contract negotiations, trade talks, etc. Like there's so much information that gets put out for a very specific purpose, again, to motivate one side or the other, to sway opinion, whatever the case may be. You have to be very cognizant of it while you are looking through all of this information. So yeah, I take it all with a grain of salt, but in the difference I see between Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf is that Jalen Ramsey has a history of sort of dictating where he goes organizationally, as shown he like has some sway over that. DK Metcalf, like, yes, he voiced some preference over where he wanted to go, but he played for one organization his entire career and needed a change. Jalen Ramsey, for reasons I do not know, because I'm not with any of these organizations, has some tendencies to, when he's done with an organization or when an organization tires of him, having a hand in where he goes next. So
true.
I think there is a little bit of it's an apples to oranges sort of thing between Metcalf and Jalen Ramsey, but you have to take it all with a grain of salt, and money speaks the loudest. So
money always speaks the loudest in the NFL. And again, at the end of the day, like the Steelers are not, this isn't the Jets. This isn't, we're going to the Cardinals or any other bad team. Like if somebody said, hey, you're going to Pittsburgh, you're like, all right, yeah, I got an opportunity. Like I'm going to make the playoffs. We're going to see what happens when I get to the playoffs. We have Mike Tomlin. I just think it's more impressive on the outside than it is the inside. Cody Silva here. I'd play Will Howard over Garrett Newsom. LSU needs a new quarterback. I talked to a lot of scouts that think Garrett Newsom has got a ton of NFL potential. It's not about how good you look in college football. It never is. Scouts could care less. If you, they like that you're good. They like that you could win big games. But at the end of the day, it's about mechanics at the NFL. And, some guys got really good ones. Garrett Newsom, I'm telling you, unless he stinks, is a guy teams are going to be talking about throughout the entire season. We'll see what happens. I know our boy Cody Silva here is an LSU guy, and that's, I think Brian Kelly's, as a guy who grew up as a Notre Dame fan until Brian Kelly showed up, I think Brian Kelly might be your issue because that guy's the worst. That guy's the worst. Macaroni salad here. Start, bench, cut podcasts. Christian Kuntz, Cam Hayward, Big Ben's. I'll be honest. I don't feel right picking between these. So because I love them all, and they would all be very offended if I didn't pick them. That being said, I see Christian Kuntz and Cam every day, so I'm gonna go with those two, because if they for some reason heard this, I think I'm in trouble a little bit. I think I'm in trouble. And Chris Kuntz is my go-to. Kuntz is good. I like Kuntz's podcast. I like Cam's podcast as well. I'm a fan of Ben's podcast, or of Cam's podcast. I'm a fan of Ben's. I would start Kuntz's, bench Cam's, cut football with Ben.
I agree hard. And just in case you're listening, Cam and Christian, Noah did say that both of yours were the worst. Just want to make sure that's in there. But I'm kidding. No, I love Christian Kuntz is hilarious. I have a preference for players in the league now than like hearing their voice, because it is rarer. It is, we don't get to see as much insight into who these players are as people as often. I love that we get to hear a sort of more uncensored version from Ben Roethlisberger in his post NFL days, but I'd rather hear from Cam Hayward and Christian Kuntz, and they're in the inner workings of what's going on. They're like, they're in where the sausage gets made, so to speak. So like, I want to hear from them and their connections right now a little bit more than I want to hear from a retired NFL player, just sort of across the board. No offense to anyone. Again, Noah was talking like mad crap, but I didn't endorse it at all.
Kuntz will hear this. That's the thing. And Cam will hear it, but he doesn't care. Like, Cam will just look at me and be like, I could squash you like a bug. Kuntz, I'll be like joking and be like, yeah, I heard you said that I suck. And I'll be like,
he did.
I did.
It's crazy.
I didn't. No. Kuntz is the man. He is the most. He should have so much more recognition. He should have just been Hard Knocks. If we're gonna be honest. I say that all the time. He should have just been an entire episode of Hard Knocks. All right. Marlon Lewis here. Would giving up assets to strengthen this team be worth it, or would it cause issues in the future? I know they're going to try to win a Super Bowl, but do you believe they can? I don't know if I believe that they are going to. I believe that if you told me the Steelers could win a Super Bowl this year compared to last, I'd say, that's a much better possibility. I think it's really hard to bet against. Like, I don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to win a Super Bowl this year. I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are going to win a Super Bowl this year. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win a Super Bowl. Even with the Philadelphia Eagles last year winning, I'd still say I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win a Super Bowl. Like, that's just just if Tom Brady was in the league, you bet on Tom Brady. That's what you do. That being said, I think the Steelers are a lot closer to a Super Bowl today than they've been in the last couple of years. And I don't think you're going to get anything in the fourth round that means as much as giving yourself a shot this year. Like, I don't think there's a reason to hold back on a fourth or a fifth round pick. If you're giving up a first or a second, there's a real conversation to be had there. But while Mason McCormick's a fourth round pick, you get a lot of guys who, and there's some others, but Anthony McFarland was a fourth round pick. Kevin Dotson was a fourth round pick. Like, these guys a lot of times don't work out, and I think it's worth the risk for a guy like Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, Jacob does not believe that the Steelers can win a Super Bowl in 2025. I think they are better than they were last year, and if they add another piece or two, even more so. I think the Steelers do believe in their chances this year legitimately. It's not just like for show, or they're not just saying it out in the public in order to generate something else. I think they really do believe that they can go for it. And in the long term, like, I just really do not believe a fourth round pick would be the thing that makes or breaks this organization. As Noah was saying, there is a line, there's too much, but in order to get a piece that you think might help you win, that's fine. Give up a pick. But if they just like start going on a spending spree and exhaust all other 2026 draft picks and beyond, that's a huge mistake. But that won't happen.
I agree. All right. Cody Silva here has got one for us. If the Chargers cut Najee Harris, will Pittsburgh pick him back up and release Cordero Patterson? I'm going to say no on this. First off, I don't think LA would cut Najee. Second, I don't think the Steelers would have any interest in bringing Najee back, nor do I think Najee would have any interest in coming back. I think both sides have moved on completely. Do you feel differently? Because there's a second part to this question.
No, I think Marshall Falk could come back in his peak, and the Steelers wouldn't cut him Cordero Patterson for him.
All right, there's a cool name here though. Cody's got another one. Who is Max Hurlman? And is he Cordero Patterson's replacement? So Hurlman is the dude from Notre Dame, local kid, and in college. He played corner, running back, fullback, tight end, and wide receiver. Right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers have him working at running back and wide receiver. And to be totally honest with you, he is the most impressive person on the field during OTAs and minicamp. Without question, he was the most impressive person on the field during OTAs and minicamp. Do I think he makes the roster? Slim chance. Do I think he is the first guy signed to the practice squad? Yes. Like, I think he is the ultimate practice squad guy, but he's fast. He's elusive. He runs great routes. He's got great hands. For a dude who looks like he might be 5 foot, jumps out of the building. It's pretty awesome. Again, I don't know who would ever replace Cordero Patterson in Pittsburgh. My favorite candidate though is Max Hurlman for sure. Did you get your eyes on 34 while you were out there?
No, not enough. And I tell you what, there's nothing he could show me. That would No, I just I think I just do not see how, if they haven't already cut ties with them, I don't understand what they're looking for, what they are anticipating seeing in training camp, or anything that the Steelers might be looking for in order to replace Cordero Patterson. I think they are just he's already on the depth chart, for week 1. It's just, he's in the 4 spot.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bummer, but I do like Max, man. I'm a big fan of what Max can bring. Couple of them here. If we can trade for Jalen Ramsey, what would you be giving up? We said a 4th there minimum, hoping for a 5th or later. Would he be an immediate starter? So this is a conversation that I think people get lost in when they say, oh, he'll walk in and he'll replace who? Beanie Bishop. That's who he'd replace, is Beanie Bishop. While they'd keep Beanie Bishop, they like Beanie Bishop. They also like Dante Kent. Jalen's a slot guy. He's played the slot for some time now, and he's really good at it. So I think that he's physical enough to work in there. I think it's a very important position when you play in the AFC with not just guys like Jamar Chase, but you end up in the playoffs. Like, you're facing teams with strong slot guys. Marvin Mims in Denver is a stud who's only getting started. Like I said, Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins is a slot guy. You end up playing the Chiefs. They have like 6 of them at this point. And on top of Travis Kelce, who could play in the slot. You have those names. Those names are never going to go away. And you need a slot guy. Even if he doesn't play all the time, you need a slot guy. That's who he'd replace. I think he'd be an immediate starter. I don't think he'd replace Darius Slay or Joey Porter Jr. unless you feel otherwise.
No. And yeah, I think if he does become a member of the Steelers, we would have to sort of shake off any sort of specific titles and who is the starter, because yeah, he might not be the one of the 2 cornerbacks to come on in their base package or something like that in their opening series, but like, he would be a starting cornerback for the Steelers. It's just where specifically are they going to use him? So yeah, I don't think he would replace Darius Slay or Porter, because I do think both of those players would be better suited to match up on the outside and have Ramsey in the slot, like you have suggested as well. But I mean, would I be mad if they were like, okay, he's the number 1 or 1 or 2 or any other position on the depth chart? No, it's all sort of semantics.
Yeah, I agree. Berg fans got one for you here, Jacob. It is where they make the hot dogs, not the sausage. Come on, man. Love the show. Have a great week. Did Jacob just refer to himself as Jacob? A 3rd-person guy over here? I won't lie to you. I'm a 3rd-person guy. At all times, I'm a 3rd person. But I'm never Noah. I'm always the kid, even though I'm 3rd.
Oh, I like that. That kind of gives you like an underdog mentality all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the kid.
I just want sometimes I want my opinions to be clear and distinct from what I think the Steelers are thinking.
Yes.
So if I refer to myself as Jacob, that's probably what I'm trying to do.
I love it. I love it. Shout out Berg fan. Duranimal. Shout out. Appreciate you as always. Make sure to call into the call-in show on Wednesday. I'm really looking forward to it. And macaroni salad. Shout out my guy here. Gift him 5 All Steelers Talk memberships today in Pittsburgh. It is a macaroni salad type of day, but eat it inside because that is going to get toasty for sure. Maddie here. Do you think they go all in on Will? And if he keeps improving as the year and season progress, maybe Aaron Rodgers persuades them to go all in on him? Does Rodgers help his case? If Aaron Rodgers showed up and said, I think Will Howard is the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers, do you think that Mike Tomlin would care?
No. Not unless he already had come to that conclusion himself.
Yes.
And this is what I mean when I like constantly reference the stubbornness of the Steelers. Like, it's not, there can be good information presented and there could be perhaps the correct opinion and information presented.
Yeah.
It doesn't sway Mike Tomlin if he has made up his mind in another direction.
Agreed.
Call it what you want. You know, it's what makes him so successful and endearing to so many players. And it's also what, you know, elicits so much criticism. You know, he's a very stubborn and sure-headed and confident human and coach. And I think that is, you know, some of what makes him a best leader and also some of what gets him into trouble sometimes. So yeah, I don't think even someone as impressive as Aaron Rodgers, because you know, he worked with Ben Roethlisberger. You don't think Ben Roethlisberger gave his opinion? I highly, highly doubt that Ben Roethlisberger in his final years was like, you know what? I think Kendrick Green is going to just be the best center I've ever had since Marquise Pouncey. I bet he voiced his opinion. Do you think they cared? No, they made a different decision that they thought was better or worked better in the moment. They don't give a, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, Will could impress. Mike Tomlin already has a plan for next season, and he is, just like you said, his stubbornness reveals itself constantly, and he is the leader. He is the leader of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is a dictatorship. It is not anything else. And Tomlin's word goes first. And again, if they have a plan already, it's going to be nearly impossible to break that plan. I also don't know if like what is it, it'd be really hard to judge because players do that constantly. Everybody says, oh, this guy's going to be really, really good, when maybe they're not. You know, Ben was, if you move Kendrick Green to guard, he's an elite guy. No, he's not. He's just not. That's not who he is. Here we are, you know, and I just think everybody gives their stamp of approval to the guys that are around them that are younger, and it doesn't mean much, doesn't hold much ground in the NFL. Again, I just think that like what Will would have to do would be ridiculous, and the Steelers would have to like totally convince themselves that they're missing out, especially if the draft class holds up the way that it's looking now, a year from now, to say, no, we're going to pass on a guy that we think could go out and make some noise. Grayson the Ginger here. Hey, Noah, how big of a year do you think Peyton Wilson and Nick Herbig will have? And do you think that both of them are here to stay for the long haul? I think Peyton Wilson is, without question. That's a guy they view that if he could take a step forward this season and next season, he's the future 3-down linebacker of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love that. I think he's got all the potential to be. I mean, Peyton Wilson was a guy that had first round hype, that if he had an ACL, probably ends up in the first round, late first round, early second round. He ends up at the end of the third round. I think that for sure is the outlook right now of Peyton Wilson. Nick Herbig, I want to say yes, but I think a lot of it plays into other decisions. Like Nick Herbig, does he stick around after his rookie contract if he's getting offers elsewhere and he's going to sit behind TJ and Alex Highsmith for the next couple of years? How good does Jack Sawyer look in that time? I think this year is a big year for both of them. Future-wise, I think Peyton Wilson's easier to predict than I do Nick Herbig.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Herbig certainly strikes me as a player who could really like explode in another organization. He has so much of the skills. He has so many flashes of brilliance, but with the depth and, if TJ Watt gets extended like we anticipate is happening, he and Highsmith are going to continue to take all of these snaps. He'll filter in, he'll continue to show promise, and then I think he might be able to get better offers outside of Pittsburgh. So if that happens, especially with Jack Sawyer maybe developing at a similar pace, then yeah, I don't really see Herbig being with the Steelers past his rookie deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, Peyton Wilson, I think, is like they see him as the replacement. It'll make Cole Holcomb leaving after this year potentially, possible. It'll make the eventual loss of Patrick Queen a little bit easier to digest because you'll have someone who is experienced, played different roles, and worked his way into becoming the leader of the middle of the defense. So yeah, Wilson strikes me as sort of like a lifer. But I think Herbig has the potential to not be here just because it's just like the situation is just way different.
I agree. All right. If we didn't sign Jalen Ramsey, would we wait until next draft to get a corner who can cover the slot? I think this year would play a massive role into that. They're going to give Beanie Bishop and Dante Kent the opportunity to see if they could be those guys. And then I just think it's too early in the outlook to project something like that. I think next year in the draft, they go out and they get a corner, an outside corner. I don't know what they do on the slot. I think it's important. I don't think it's the most important position on the field for the Steelers. So if you go in other directions, if you go get a wide receiver, if you go get a quarterback, if you go get an outside corner, maybe another lineman to replace Isaac Seumalo, who might, you never know what's going to happen after his contract ends after this season. I think all those are possibilities. But I think this year it depends on Beanie Bishop and Dante Kent. Do you feel different?
No, I do feel like it's worth mentioning that, we talked about Omar Khan's like sort of long answer about Will Howard and what they see in him. He gave a very similar type of response regarding Dante Kent. So I'm curious to see how much rope they potentially give him to fill in that position, especially if there is no, outside addition for the slot cornerback position. I would imagine Beanie Bishop gets first dibs, and then Dante Kent would take over if he struggles. So I'm curious if they see maybe a longer rope for him in that role than they would give Beanie Bishop in this upcoming season. But beyond that, I don't think it's like a big need that's being discussed within the Steelers right now. It's really just, do we have a franchise quarterback in the room, or, who is the guy that we are going to target in the next draft to become that person in the room? So
I agree.
Yeah, not right now. Cornerback, especially slot cornerback, is lower on the priority list.
I agree. Mike Lang here. What moves can be made to make this offseason offense scary, like Killer Bees scary? I think if you go out and get a wide receiver, Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin, Romeo Dobbs, that might be where it ends for me. If we're going to be like just names that are realistic, that makes it scary. But it's like so hard because Killer Bees had prime Ben, they had prime AB, they had prime Le'Veon Bell. Like those were guys that were unbelievable. Even if Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren are those guys, you got to hope DK Metcalf's in his prime, and you got to hope Aaron Rodgers could somehow pull one last great year out of his butt and make it happen. And I don't know if that's going to happen. The Killer B era was wild, and something that happens once in a blue moon. But I think that if you go out and get a wide receiver and the offensive line works, I mean, they got the potential. They have the pieces for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about that Killer Bees offense as well is that offensive line was also still in their prime, especially the interior with Pouncey and DeCastro. They were just, I mean, you struggled to get, any sort of pressure. They could really, Ben Roethlisberger had a lot of freedom to do what he wanted to get the ball to these incredible playmakers. So yeah, they would have to add someone really like a Terry McLaurin who has the pedigree of being an all-pro or being a Pro Bowler, because between Roethlisberger, Pouncey, Bell, Brown, DeCastro, they had 4 or 5 Pro Bowlers on that team at any given time. So yeah, you have quite the monstrous task in replicating that right now.
I agree. Sticking with that one, Duranimal's got one. I got a fun one. If you could take any team's number 2 receiver to pair with DK, who would you pick? Any team in the NFL?
Wow. That's a great question.
Great question. I think I got one.
Yeah, if you have one, please shoot it off while I continue to think.
T. Higgins is on the list for sure. I think he's the most undervalued number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. I think that dude is an absolute monster of a wide receiver, and how they somehow pulled that off. I get it. I don't think the Bengals are going to be good, but how they somehow pulled that off, unbelievable. I'd go. I think T. Higgins is up there. Like Nico Collins is a number 1, but there was a time where he was a number 2, and that guy would have been. There was a strong argument for that for sure. As I go down the list, you got any?
Not that T. Higgins is the winner by far. I mean, the fact that he is even a number 2 receiver on an NFL team is like absurd. So no, I'm not even going to waste. I'm not even going to waste your animal's time trying to come up with a better option. Noah hit it out of the park immediately.
What about Devontae Smith in Philadelphia?
That's pretty good too.
Yeah, that's a good one as well.
Have T. Higgins just for like the different, like I would prefer his like physicality.
Yeah,
and like size.
They'd match very well. I agree. Yeah. I agree. I think they'd match very well. T. Higgins is such an underrated guy in the NFL. It's crazy.
Killer.
To be honest. All right. Let's keep it trucking here as we close out. John Malesko, how do you feel about Taylon Green out of Arkansas? Taylon Green's a stud, to be honest with you. 6'6", 230, 4.4 speed, strong arm. If the Razorbacks do well this year, does he work his way into the first round conversation? I do. I think there are a couple of guys. Fernando Mendoza is a name that's starting to emerge. That'll be that middle round guy. But this is just what it shows you, is that this year there are so many options that a year out, and things are going to change. A lot of things are going to change. But a year out, there's so much excitement about what's to come in this draft class. And that is... like, there's some hype. There's some serious hype around these guys. Taylon Green's a guy that, to me, the mobility of what he can do and his ability to break tackles, because the 230, like the 6'6", 230, you could look at the speed, but he looks bigger than he is. You know, he's got that Anthony Richardson kind of size to him, and I think the Steelers would be fascinated in a guy with that size and that mobility. Mobility is going to be big for them. I like Taylon Green. I was a fan of Taylon Green. I don't know if I'd consider him a first round pick right now, but I was a fan of Taylon Green. To be honest with you, I don't know if I view him yet as a guy who's definitely going to come out. But I am a fan of Taylon Green. You know anything about the Arkansas Razorbacks quarterback?
I was going to say he's pretty much the exact type of college quarterback that I would fall in love with during the like draft process and all that. So yeah, I think that there is potential there. That there has not been anyone who has supplanted Lenora Sellers for me as like the guy right now, subject to change with lots of time in between now and the 2026 draft. But when you have a guy who is, again, has all of the size, has a pretty good awareness for the game, and, you know, has lots of room to grow still, that's a lot to like. So yeah, I think he's a great name to mention now that could be sneaking his way up higher and higher the draft rankings. Where he ends up, not sure yet, but a great name to monitor.
I agree. And I also didn't, after a quick Google search, didn't realize that he is a redshirt senior. I thought he had 2 years left, but I guess he did play at Boise State a little bit longer than I thought he did. But could be a name. Definitely a name to watch here. Dusty Savage was watching a movie and they said, let's keep it trucking. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Chef Salad here. My last Monday being 29. Will we get a big player today or tomorrow? What's your 1 out of 10? No, give me a percentage here. Percentage chance the Pittsburgh Steelers make a splash move between now and Latrobe.
43.7%. I think it's almost likely. I'm holding out hope. I'm getting more confident about that being the reality as we get a little closer. But right now, today, June 23rd, no, I'm just under, on being confident fully in it yet. If that makes sense.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was a little surprised at a number higher than like 15%. I like it. I think it is on the table for, what'd you say, 45? I like 45.
43.7.
43.7%. I like it. I think it's a great number. And we'll finish it off with this one. Shout out our boy Macaroni Salad, celebrating a boss-free week ahead. My guy, I hope
Did you kill your boss?
He just forced him to leave. And then what happened after those 6 vodkas and ice or vodkas on the rocks? Just, we never know. We never know. All right. Shout out to Macaroni Salad. Shout out to everybody. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow with, hopefully a fun Overreaction Tuesday for you guys and many more headlines on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Until then, enjoy a beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.